Welcome to Business Aspirin, pain relief for business. Clint Junell has managed a restoration company in Dallas since 2008 and is one of the top drying experts in his region. Clint is also the co-founder of JobDocs, a software developed to help his team manage their overwhelming volume of projects. On the podcast, Clint brings together business managers and leaders to share with you how they have overcome their business pains and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Clint Junell.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Clint Junell with Business Aspirin. Today I have with me Chris Fisher from Balefish Restoration. Chris, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being on. Glad to have you on as a guest with us today.
Glad to be here.
Chris and I have known each other for a little while. In fact, Chris is, a client. And so we've had a relationship and some time to chat and do some other things and sat down at a table, even at a restoration conference together and learned together. And that was a pleasure, Chris, being able to spend some time with you. And I greatly appreciate that.
Likewise.
So, Chris, tell everybody first, let me say, everybody, hey, I'm clearly not sitting in my office today, and the Wi-Fi wouldn't work well enough for me to use my computer and get everything set up. So we're doing this from my phone. We'll see what happens as we go through this process. Chris is fortunate enough to be the guinea pig on this, and he's a good sport, so we'll be able to make this work. But Chris, tell us a little bit about Chris and where you're at and, what you do, all the fun parts of who Chris is.
We are based in Columbus, Ohio. We cover the entire state of Ohio. Myself, I am a proud father of 6 children, and the 7th is on the way. Of that mix, we have 1 boy, so the rest are all girls, including the one on the way. So that
one on the way is a girl also.
That is it. So,
man,
that's I'm dealing with it.
That's a lot to keep up with, brother. I've got 3, right? And travel hockey and dance and baseball and all of it is just overwhelming. I don't know how you do it. So kudos to you for being able to handle that and do that well. And for being able to navigate business in the process also. But that's also something for people to pay attention to is life still exists, right? Even while we're doing business. And so we got to take care of those things. And it's not just that job ends when you go home. You got to still work when you get home. You've got a family to raise. You got people to deal with. And those are important things for you to navigate as well.
Definitely. It's a big part of our life. We're active in sports as well. I have lacrosse, basketball, softball, baseball. I have one in college that's playing lacrosse in college. So that keeps us moving as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But then there's some upsides to technology, obviously, with phones and apps. It gives us an opportunity to continue to work on business while we're involved in family, but follow. Some of the sports have apps that you can follow. As that big of a family, We're split in separate places no matter what. So you can still
divide and conquer.
Oh, yeah. You can still follow an event while you're not there and kind of vice versa. So it helps.
What sports are we dealing with?
Current season is softball is just wrapping up. Baseball, we're in the middle of travel ball. That wraps up here at the end of July. And then the first week of August, we'll start lacrosse for my college age. It's off-season training, so she'll start. Not much for us to get involved into until the winter or spring.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about Balefish and let's talk about restoration. And how did you get in the industry? Talk to us about kind of your background there and what's going on and who Balefish is. And let's get into it.
Balefish, the name, that's usually the first question anyone asks when they hear it. Where does Balefish come from? It's a little unique and odd. My wife's maiden name is Bailey. My last name's Fisher. 2 very common names when they're separate, but when we put them together, it just kind of stuck. We're family owned and operated. It's unique enough that people remember it usually when they see it. Sure. It's unique enough that nobody's really trying to steal it. So I don't worry about copyright infringement. How I got into it is best man of my wedding was an accountant for Servpro Corporate. And he decided to buy his own franchise. At the time, I was in corporate management myself for restaurant chains, P.F. Chang's being the largest, and was looking for a change. Had found success, but wasn't rewarded. He bought a franchise down in Southwest Florida for Servpro and asked me to come help him get it started, kind of ground floor up. So it was me and him. We'd go out market during the day. Some come in, we'd go do water, mold. Not as much fire at that point. We did a ton of water and mold. We had we were kind of newer, a couple of years in, and Hurricane Charlie hit our area. We were in the Fort Myers area, and that really was trial by fire. So at that point, we learned pretty much everything we needed to know. Once our hurricane hit our backyard, we saw every part of it. So rode that truck for about 4 years and decided to move back to Ohio, which my family was from. Came back to Ohio, got into the textile part of our industry. So I was doing textile restoration. I was a sales manager for 5 states. The owner of that textile restoration company also owned a structure restoration company, and he asked me to come on board on the structure side. So then came over to the structure side, learned the structure. So kind of got to see really all segments of our industry, which is a little bit of an unusual path. Most just get into 1 or 2. That textile portion of it being the biggest one, not a lot get to be in that industry. So fast forward, had a couple opportunities, tried a couple of partnerships that didn't work out, and got to the point that I started Balefish on my own. So,
and when did you start Balefish, Chris?
We officially started in 2018. I kind of was doing it part-time. I was working during the day, and the owner allowed me to do some side stuff on the weekends and evenings. He got to a point where he wasn't going to be in the industry any longer. So I got laid off and I started Balefish. So 2018, we were kind of doing part-time. 2019, February 2019, we really went full-time. I cashed out my 401k of a large sum of $2,700 and started Balefish. Was basically just enough to buy some business cards, a cell phone plan, and incorporate in the state of Ohio. And we were off
at that point in 2018, you had purchased some equipment, I guess, because you had been doing a little bit of stuff on the side.
We were doing structure only when we started. So all I needed was a tape measure and a truck.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
I subbed everything out at that point, did all the sales, marketing, accounting, estimating, project management, but we were 100% subbed out at that point.
So
with that giant capital infusion of $2,700.
Yeah, that $2,700, man, makes a big difference. And I know that feeling, dude. I can tell you some things about getting started where it's like, okay, I've got a couple assets, but I have $100 left right now. Okay, what do we do? But let's talk about that for a second, where like you went all in, right? And in a lot of cases, people go, okay, I just got laid off. Now what? And they start going to look for another job, and they don't really necessarily dig in fully to what is the next step, right? Like, I got to find a job. And in your case, you went, no. We're just going to take this thing full time and run with it. So let's talk about that for a second. Like the mentality there, the mental side of going, all right, let's go. It's go time.
I've always had it. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I remember in elementary school, I started a slingshot business where back in the 70s, your curtains were hung by little hangers, and I figured out how to make slingshots out of them. So I really had all that. Now all the curtains fell to the ground and I got in trouble by my mom, but I've always had that spirit. And I believe in myself enough to just run for it. Now, my wife didn't believe as much quite as I did, as we had 5 children at the home at that time. So it was a little scary, but it's just, I knew the industry. I believed in the industry. I believed in, with my background, because especially that textile restoration piece, my clients were restoration contractors and large loss adjusters. So I knew I had the relationships, but I had also seen what everyone did well and everyone did poorly, and really thought I could build a company emphasizing what everyone was doing poorly and just do it better, really. So that was the focus.
That's amazing. I think, and you've had some pretty good success, right? Like you're doing well now as a company. So Balefish has got some pretty good traction, and you do really pretty well as a business now. And so even through, I mean, you got, depending on when in 2018 you started, you got maybe 2 full years, maybe a year and a half, maybe just over a year of operation. And then suddenly the world spiraled out of control and we had the whole pandemic.
Yep.
So Ohio, talk to me about Ohio through the pandemic, because Texas, clearly restoration is essential business in what we're doing. We didn't, there certainly was a lull, right? It certainly impacted us, but we weren't technically shut down. So talk about Ohio. What was the market like in Ohio during that time?
We were fine. We're considered essential. So the way Ohio did it was they had shutdowns you had a really hard 19 days that everything was shut down except for essential businesses. Then after that, they did a little bit of a soft opening where the majority of businesses were forced to shut down. I hope he catches something, by the way.
I know, no doubt, right? Like we'll let him know he's going to be on a podcast later and see what happens.
Right.
Amazing.
So we were considered essential business. Now we did do the 19-day shutdown just so I could gather the right safety equipment, make sure we had enough hand sanitizer. We had a shortage of hand sanitizer like everybody. So there was guidelines you had to follow. So I took the 19 days to shut down. Luckily, we're in a position we could pay all of our employees to stay home while I really, use the resources and the contacts to get the right safety equipment that we could get on every job site. So after that, really was the same every day for us. We had to go through some different steps as far as being in people's homes. Luckily for us, our business is about 70% fire related. So most of the homes were vacant and people were living in other homes. So
sure. So
material was the biggest
wasn't
issue.
Necessary.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't. Yeah. So luckily we didn't. We grew. We doubled sales 2000. So pretty much every year from 2018 till 2022, we doubled every year in sales. So
it's amazing, man. Love it.
Yeah. So we're doing well. We're up to now 30 employees, starting from just me.
And $2,700.
And $2,700. Yeah. I still haven't paid myself back, by the way. I should do that.
Well, you need to get that back. You'd be like, where's my $2,700? I think that's important.
Collecting interest. So you've
significant growth, right? Significant growth through a pandemic on essentially a brand new company because you knew the industry. So tell me, what's the most important thing that you brought into the business?
We're outside the box. Like I said, I really emphasized on what the other folks don't do and tried to find a way, build the better mousetrap, as they say. So my industry in Ohio, it's a great industry, restoration, but it's a little stagnant on some of the ideas that they do. So now a couple years down the road, I can kind of go through this. I used to keep it a little more hidden. So one of the first positions I hired was an interior designer. That was instead of a project manager, an estimator, a salesperson, I brought in an interior designer. So being that we do so much heavy fire, every client got to work with an interior designer, which just made them feel special. It's that HGTV kind of moment. Whether it was a $60,000 trailer fire or $1 million residential kind of commercial fire, they all got to work with an interior designer, made them feel special.
Absolutely.
But it also helped bridge that gap, that downtime between when you get the lead to when you get the permit. You got to wait on architects, engineers. There's so much downtime. It kind of kept the customer engaged in the process.
Sure. Because the customers look at it and go, why is nothing happening in this process? Then they believe, well, there's nothing going on in my home, although there's tons of stuff going on in the back end they're not seeing. But if you have someone to engage them and keep them in the loop, that's amazing. I love that idea. We do a little bit of interior design work, but we don't have a staff person that does that. And not everybody gets it. We have some that we deal with depending on the client and what's happening with the client and what's going on. But I like that idea. And I think that's significant. Beyond that, not just the interior design person, it's customer care, right? It's customer engagement, customer care. And I think that's the bigger piece there that makes you go, okay, we're going to stand out because we're going to ensure that the customer has someone that is engaging them and making them feel special and just at a different level than what you've ever. I don't know anybody in the restoration space that's necessarily doing that. And I know clearly you and I are part of a group together with Core, and there's some big players in that space, right? There are guys that are running $200 million in revenue. And it's amazing, but I don't know any of them that are doing that. So that's a great little piece that even some of them might bring in.
And it's funny you mentioned that. So we were utilizing as you drink out of your cup there, we were utilizing a project management software in the industry I won't name. That is not Job Docs, your major competitor. I know you know who that is. And when we were going through setting up our processes with them, they kind of have templated positions in a restoration company that everyone needs to have. And when I kind of went over, well, I have this interior design. they didn't know what to do with it. Like they didn't know where to put it in that task and where to put it in the workflow, because it's nothing that they had ever heard of. So it really gives, but from a strategic, now it worked out. And this is where just business luck happened. It also, where that interior design position became critical, not just for the customer part, but because of COVID, the material issues that were ongoing within the country, that interior designer had two roles. And that was, one, the customer part of it, but two is to work directly with the vendors for our suppliers. So we knew daily what we could get and what we couldn't. And we could guide homeowners down that right path of going, hey, this is available now. What this other material is available, we don't know in, a year or 2 years. So let's keep moving in this direction. So we didn't have all that wasted time chasing material that wasn't available. So it really gave us a strategic opportunity as well that we never even counted on, that just ironically fell into place.
Worked out well. Yeah. So it's interesting. You said, like, you do some things that are outside of the box, and so you made a mention of another company, and literally there are people in this industry that believe you can only do things one particular way, and they believe that their way is the best way, and they don't allow you to adapt based on how you operate. And in your case too, like, because of some of your background, is you've made some of your competitors your clients as well.
Yep.
And so much, like, this is one of the things that I talk about quite a bit, especially having job docs and having other restoration companies, even in the DFW market, that are our clients, and having to help everyone understand that this is a big space and there's lots of opportunity, and not to view all of this as the enemy. Like, everyone that's in the same industry isn't necessarily your enemy, they are your competition at some level, but you can do something special. And in your case, you've turned that on its head. You said, look, I'm going to make you my client, and I'm not going to compete with you for certain things. Instead, I'm going to make sure that I care for you. And then you do some things outside of the box to care for their clients, to make them even look special.
Yep. And that's amazing. And then the second position we brought in was, so I looked at the two biggest complaints in restoration. It was communication and the time it takes. Well, the time it takes, there's so many variables that are outside of our control. We did what we could to improve upon that. But then the communication part, the second position I brought in was a coordinator that their only job is to call every customer every day. That's all they do. Sometimes just to say hi. Sometimes it's to give them whatever update they can give them, and document it so that they start at the top of the list, get to the bottom, go right back to the top. So every customer on an average was 2 to 3 times a week was getting contacted, and that update was going in so that their adjuster, their property manager, their agent, whomever, their brother, sister, daughter, aunt, uncle, everybody was in that process. So we could bridge that gap of lack of communication, which, as you know, is a big one in restoration. Everybody feels like they're forgotten. So those are those outside the box things that we jumped on that really were home runs for us.
Yeah. So if there's a few days of no activity or a week of no activity on their house where they are wanting to go back in there every day and they're wanting to see things, they can't unless you have some tool to communicate with them or a person to communicate with them. That's part of the reason we even built job docs to begin with, was because it was really difficult to communicate with person every day and make sure everybody was on the same page. And so a tool to allow us to be able to go, okay, my team can know where we're at, the client can know where we're at, and the adjuster can know where we're at, as long as the human element makes sure there's some kind of note or some kind of communication with the person to make sure that it's all there. And kudos to you for viewing the communication side, because that's exactly what it is, man. And 95% of the problems in the restoration space still stem from lack of communication or failing to communicate clearly what really is taking place and being truthful with the client. You know, in a lot of cases, it is outside of your control. So tell them what is true, because that's better than telling them what you think they want to hear and that not being truthful.
That's my quote to customers that are getting, on the edge or antsy, is you can't accuse us of lack of communication just because you don't like what we're telling you. That's absolutely, we're going to be honest. We're going to be truthful. We're communicating. We're over communicating. It's not always going to be what you want to hear. That's not what we want to hear. We want to get this done as quick as possible as well. We don't want to run into hiccups, and we're ultimately contractors. We're builders. We're producers. We want to see the end product. We take pride in it. All of my team, from top to bottom, to laborers, to carpenters, to plumbing, HVAC, we want to see the finished product. We take pride in that. We hire for builders and people that want to see that. So we don't want to be here any longer than you do.
And we don't make any more money if it takes longer.
Nope.
We lose money for every extra day it takes. It costs us more money.
Yep.
We want it done as much as you. Absolutely. For sure. Chris, what is something you wish you had known?
When I started?
Yeah.
The value of a controller.
Okay.
So, being for the accounting piece. I took that burden on. My degree is in financial management. So many years ago. So I tried to convince myself that I can handle that piece. And when it ended up every day, at the end of the day, the last thing I would do was accounting, and it just kept getting further and further behind. So once we brought that final piece in, that was a pretty critical piece of a full-time controller. The accounting portion, it slowed down our receivables, slowed down our invoicing, slowed down our ability to file liens. When we weren't paid, it slowed everything down, truthfully.
Sure. That was the thing for us. And it wasn't necessarily the controller side so much as not knowing where things were, right? We didn't know where projects really were. We had to bring the entire team together, including our controller, to understand what's the status and should we be calling for a second draw check? And did we actually invoice for the content pack out that we did or the content clean that we did, or did we just forget it? Did it slip through the cracks? And that was one of the big things for us is we had to navigate making sure that things were communicated clearly to our team so that we knew where we stood and where our next step really needed to be. I think that's critical too. And you're saying that at the same time in terms of bringing on the controller, because you can't do it all. And you can't tie up everybody to navigate all those things together, right?
Nope. And when I finally got to stop and slow down, we had a 2-year period where we had and I say this for other business owners so they can learn from my mistakes. We probably had about $350,000 worth of supplements, legit mechanical open items in an estimate. We just never billed for. We paid our bills. We never invoiced it out. So that's a huge number, to let go through the wayside. That slowed down we're growing as fast as we are, but that still slowed that down even more. I could have got resources to that controller quicker in certain aspects. So,
I agree wholeheartedly with that statement, because the reality is, like I said that on a previous podcast too, is which part of the reason we had even built JobDocs as a system, because I know things are slipping through the cracks. I haven't gone back to track it fully because I don't want to know 100% exactly how much we failed, because that's frustrating. But I'm telling you, I bet there was a couple $100,000 a year for a couple of years there that we did exactly the same thing. Everybody got paid for what we did, but we didn't actually bill for and collect for pack outs or for, other little ancillary things. Maybe we had, duct cleaning, HVAC system cleaning stuff done that we just forgot to capture those little details, and there was nothing to force us to remember it. So we had to get together and sit down and have meetings in order to try to remember what we had done and make sure we were making notes about it. And then we were relying on the human element to make sure that somebody was communicating that back so we could bill it. And we failed miserably. So we solved part of that problem, but man, those are painful, The other thing we really on mine, I didn't know, I could have never dreamed, when I started this in 2018, where we would be right now. Never in my wildest dreams. I knew I could go out. I knew I could do it. I knew I could feed my family. I didn't know where the future was going to go. So I'm the opposite of, I was watching David with Bill, where he had everything kind of lined up, processes designed, procedures designed. Kudos to him. I had nothing. It was me and a whole lot. I talked to some other folks at some different conferences. I built this business on hustle, grit, and grind. That is 100% what it is. And every day I tried to solve as many problems as I could, but I probably should have had a little more confidence in my ability to build a substantial company or a sustaining company and put some processes and procedures. Because now that I'm going backwards, trying to establish those for employees that are already in place and operating for 2-3 years, it's more of a challenge to implement. We can all sit down in a room and write them, but implementing them is the challenge. Yeah. So follow through is tough. Like to have to backtrack and do something different is certainly difficult. So yes, if you guys are listening to this, I didn't do it either, Chris. I didn't build all the processes either. I started building processes once we built a software tool. But what I did was when I brought people on, I taught them how to do everything the same way I was doing everything, because I thought that's how you were going to grow.
Yep.
And I hated the corporate world. I hated the rules that were behind all of that. And I kind of railed against that side of things. And so I taught one guy how to do sales and marketing and collections and estimating and billing. And I mean, I taught myself how to do all that. Then I taught him, and then I taught another person. And then we grew enough that it's like, okay, wait a minute. We can't keep up with all this. This is too much. There's too many jobs. There's 300 plus jobs a year going on right now with different people doing different things. And you can't do that. So if you're listening and you have the opportunity, create some processes. And we've got some tools to help you create processes. I've got sheets that'll show you how to do some of those things. Chris may be willing to share some of his struggles in regard to process, but we've got resources. So reach out if you want some information about how do I build processes? How do I build a process for touch points with clients? Or how do I build a process for my staff on mitigation or safety processes or any of those things? There's resources available that can help you navigate that. And that's why we're here. That's the whole reason we're even doing this podcast, is to help you find solutions to business pains. And so if you need help, reach out. There's ways to get in touch with us, do that. And you can hit me up either at Mr. Restore, which is my restoration company, or JobDocs, which is a software company. And Chris will share your contact information if you're willing to help anybody along the path, and we can kind of navigate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd rather people learn from my mistakes.
Well, I mean, don't do it again, right? Like you and I have already failed at some things because we were stupid and we didn't I think you're like me at some level where you I didn't want to learn from anybody because I wanted to go against what the system was doing and what the industry did, which you've kind of gone that same way too, where you're like, the system's broken. Let's do it a little bit differently. But at the same time, there's knowledge out there from some of these guys that are really, really capable of helping you. And they're not your competition. You've got to figure out that this isn't about your pride and those kind of things. This is about being successful. So swallow all of that and ask for help, because there are guys that are really talented that can help and will help because they've been successful and they failed.
It's funny you say that.
Great point.
One of my most humbling moments in this business was, so there were the textile company and then the sister company that the same owner had, which was Structure. He's a 50-year restorer. He goes back to the early days of restoration. He is a well-accomplished, master restorer, back in the CR, actually certified restorer before they had the master. So very accomplished. I have a lot of respect for him, but very old school, the way this all got started, and it's this way and this way only. So when I started this company, I was kind of anti anything that he would do. I'm gonna have unlimited PTO. I'm gonna, the margins are important, but they're not the end all be all. Just everything he did, I thought, I could do this better. And my humbling moment was about 3.5 years in. I found myself having conversations with employees, and I'm implementing the exact same things he had. And I turned to my wife and I went, I get it now. Like I get why he was doing. Now, everything he was doing wasn't necessarily our personality, and we can do things different culturally.
Sure.
But there were some processes he had that I kind of like my kids and me as a parent, I go, okay, now I get it. I'm going to have to swallow my pride on this one. And he did understand a few things better than me. So, and I have a couple employees now that have worked at his company. He's been around so long. Most people in our industry here have worked for him a time or two. And we all shake our head in a meeting when we're implementing something, and we all look at each other that worked over there and just go, shoot. Yeah. He was right.
You can, whatever his name is, you can name your process implementation after him. Like we're going to do a whatever, we got to do a Dan or whatever his name is. Right. But I resonate with that so much. Like I remember going, okay, I got to build an employee manual and just freaking hating it, going, okay, this is why they have those in place. Okay. I see. Okay, I hate this, but I got to do it. And I've learned, and I explained to my team, like, look, I hate this, but I understand why we have to have it now, because we can't all just be doing our own thing and be able to be successful and have growth. And I can't touch every project anymore. I can't see everything you're doing anymore. And so we have to navigate it that way. And I think that's great.
Yep.
So let's talk about what current pains are you experiencing?
Probably that my team adapting to those processes are the biggest ones. Most everyone that works here, I've known for years. I have relationships. They came on in those early stages as we really exploded in that growth. And it was very wild, wild west, screw the man kind of thing. Yeah. We're going to beat the system. And now that we have to implement some of those, some of them aren't adapting as well. And that's difficult for me because these are people I've known for some of them, sure, even before I was in restoration. They worked for me in my former life of corporate management. So some of that's been a challenge of getting them to understand and buy in.
And that's significant too, right? Like we've had full podcasts that were about, the staff and the team being able to buy in and culturally being part of your group because they can be insanely successful at their particular job and what they do. But if they can't buy into the processes and how we're going to have to move things forward, it's tough, right? And so you've got to be able to navigate some of that and help walk them through that and transition them into the new processes and making all this stuff work. And I think that's beautiful. Yeah. So how are you overcoming some of that right now?
Tell them to shut up and do what I say. No, just kidding.
Smack.
Yeah. I just try to walk them through it. Trying to really build into my team is very, very loyal. And just trying to leverage that loyalty of look, I get it as well. This is a hard transition. It's hard for me, hold me accountable when I'm not following the processes. Cause I'm kind of a like you said, I'm a Lone Ranger out here and just doing what I think is right. So I'm encouraging them to hold me accountable and, sure, and just rely on each other and that loyalty. We're all going to go through the pain together, of yeah, change and adapting.
Has anybody held you accountable?
No.
Yeah. See, that's tough, right? Because they don't feel like they can. And it's difficult to create that culture where it's like legitimately, I need help on some of this because I'm going to want to do things the way I've done things for forever. And if I need to change what I'm doing, if I need to, be smarter about whatever safety related or making sure that I back my vehicle in because that's one of our rules or which I do that pretty regularly, but tell me hey, look, dude. And it's tough to get them to buy in on that because you're the boss, right? And I can't tell the boss. Yep. I don't want to get in trouble.
Yep. I have a coordinator that she's like, I've known her before I was in this industry. She used to be my boss, which is kind of the reverse. And now she works for our company and she'll on occasion will kind of nudge me. But outside of that, not many of them are pushing me the way I would like to see them. So,
yeah, sure. I occasionally have them hound me a little bit about loading receipts or something like that. But that's kind of the extent of it. Like, hey, you need to get your receipts in. I'm like, I got it. I'm on it. And I try to be respectful of it and do it immediately, right? Because I built systems for that to happen and I'm asking you to make sure that it happens. So do that. Hold me accountable.
Yep.
So that's your business pain right now. What is, if you were to look at something right now and go, there's information I need to share in developing a business and growing a business. Is there something specific you want to share with anyone?
For me, a real critical thing, and it's loosely tied. I had to have the buy-in of my family. That was a big part of me because I knew how much it was going to take. I'm an all in or all out sort of personality. So I knew if I was going to do this, I tried it with partners years ago and it just didn't work because again, my mentality, so I knew I was going to be all in and I really needed my family to be okay with that. So we sat down and had a long conversation about, hey, if I make this run at it, I'm going to go full steam and it's going to wear on, we have a really close family, but it's going to take me away mentally, not just time, but when I'm at your sports, I might have to email, I might have to take a call, I might have to this and that. So that was important to me for that startup portion. So if it's somebody looking to start up, I can't stress enough. It's important to have that behind you and we'll really sit down with them. We sat down and kind of had a family meeting and went down and I outlined what it was going to take from me and thus them. It's sacrifice on their part as well. And if they wouldn't have been okay with it, then I wouldn't have done it. From my wife to all my kids as well. So,
and I'll tell you, from that perspective, and I love hearing you say that. My family grew up in it. My kids, right? My wife had been around me a little bit in different service industry things, and so she kind of knows how I'm wired. But it still sucks when you got to go to work at 7 p.m. on a Friday night and you're supposed to be having dinner, and. Yep. It's not fun for anybody. It's not fun for my staff to have to do it. I'm aware that it sucks. I'm aware that it's not any good. It's the decisions that we've made. My kids grew up with this is who I am and what I did. And so it's pretty normal for them and they kind of understand it. But like right now, literally, I mean, look, I'm in Red River, New Mexico. I'm supposed to be on vacation and we're doing a podcast because this is what's required in order for us to try to make our businesses grow and do the things that we're trying to do to grow a business, help people, help our families, all those things, right? It's what it is.
Yep. And my family, so my kids, especially my older, so I have a 23, 18, 17, 11, 10, 1.5, and then the one on the way. So the older three really grew up with me working in it and they know the response and they've sat in a truck at 3 a.m. at a fire, but it wasn't me owning it where you have all the other hats that you're responsible to make sure that people are getting paid. I take it personal that make sure everyone that Balefish touches is earning a living to feed their families and they get paid first and that type of mentality. So I knew it was going to be a different level of it. So it was important for me to have that buy-in from them. But yeah, 9 a.m. on Christmas morning this year when the big freeze happened in the United States, I was the first call and I was out the door and that's a hard pill to swallow. And we kind of have a mantra I've raised my kids by and it's, we don't wish for it, we work for it. So I've kind of instilled that philosophy and that value in them that we live it. We don't just say it. So they respect it. It's still hard on them,
it's still hard.
That's kind of, as I look across my desk, my 11-year-old wrote a bunch of inspirational Post-it notes last week. So I'm kind of looking at all those, but
that's beautiful.
Yes. I mean, that's
so
really it.
The point for all of you that are listening to this is like, it's hard. And if you're weak-minded, it's really easy to quit. And in a lot of cases, I'm aware of a lot of companies that they were on trajectory to be really successful, but it got hard. It got a little bit scary and they couldn't sustain the stress for a brief period of time that probably would have launched them into a lot of success. And part of that is family stressors and financial stressors and all those things. But to have a support system behind you that says, let's go do this is significant. And I love hearing you say that because I think that's important for all the entrepreneurs to hear is you're picking something because there's another pain, right? Like in your case, you got laid off. So there was a pain point that said, okay, now I have to do something. And in a lot of cases, it's really easy to just go back to another job and leave all of this stress of payroll and caring for your staff and ensuring everybody has something going on and deal with clients and being the one to ensure the phone is answered at 3 a.m. It's easy to leave that to somebody else. So if you want to be successful and an entrepreneur, you have to buy in fully and you have to be able to dig in. And Chris, I love hearing you say that because I think that's a significant part of what it's going to take to have success in business and to grow and develop.
Yep. And you hit it right on the head. It is hard. It's exhausting. We had a mentality of the first really 2.5, 3 years of, I would tell my wife, I just got to get to tomorrow. That's it. If I can get to tomorrow, then I get to the next tomorrow and the next tomorrow. Financially, there were days that my team didn't know this, but as anyone that's, there were days that I'm scrambling around it, trying to get every check I could deposited by midnight so they would clear by 8 a.m. and I could make payroll that day. That's just the way, my wife would go, why are you going out to collect this check 2.5 hours? Because I have to, I got to get to tomorrow, so
I need it.
That's the way the grind was the first couple of years. Cause again, that $2,700 didn't really go very far.
Sure.
But
that doesn't carry you very far into the future.
Yeah. We didn't have a bank. We didn't have a line of credit. It was just hustle, grit and grind. So it's hard and it'll push you to your max. And if you don't have the support system behind you, if you have a family, that's even a bigger stressor because you're worried about your family, how, not just financially, how it's going to affect them, but from their happiness there. I don't want to ruin my kids and then feel like they didn't have a father growing up because he was always working, but
exactly.
But there's a lot of perks to it. They get to enjoy the things of life they want to enjoy as we've grown and become more successful. They get opportunities that we wouldn't have had 5 years ago, just because the business is growing. And I got to take my family to California to a conference that we'd never been further west than Chicago. We're from Ohio.
Right.
We drove cross country to the conference you and I were in. And so we drove I took my younger kids, my older ones were in college. They couldn't go or high school. we drove across the country. We saw a beautiful country. Those are opportunities that if we weren't doing this, we wouldn't have had. We spent, 4 days driving there, 4 days back. It was incredible, just one-on-one time to seeing the USA parts that we never knew existed. So.
Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of opportunities to do this. It's hard. It's difficult. It's rewarding. It's all the things, right? And that's what makes doing it so beautiful, is because, I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to a lot of my kids' hockey tournaments because I can do podcasts from wherever. I can answer the phone. I can coordinate projects. I can talk to clients. I can talk to adjusters. I can do all the things that I'm typically going to do because my team is spectacular and they have my back to support me in all of that environment. And you've got the same thing. And that's beautiful, man. I love it.
Yep. And that's the other thing. If you're starting out, try to find some kind of associate, whatever your industry is. Restoration's great because we have a couple peer groups. Try to find a peer group, whether it's local, statewide, national, that with social media, the upside is there's all kinds of forums, Facebook, there's probably a group for everything. Find somebody that you can just vent to the headache, and you'll find out that you're not alone. You're going through the same things. And that's why I kind of reached out to you and complimented you on your podcast. I've been watching a few of them, and, you hear these other business owners talk about the same pain points that I've had and realize that I'm not alone. I sit in my four walls and stress over it, and to hear other people who are successful say, man, this yourself, just sharing these stories. And I had that same problem. You start to realize that, you're not alone. It's the same challenges everybody's facing. You just got to keep pushing through it. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right. And it's perfect. And it's not just small business. It's not just us. It's the Walmarts of the world and Amazons of the world and FedEx. And all these guys have struggles and things that aren't going the way they would hope they would. So don't give up just because of that. Persevere, press through that. Yep. Chris, I want to be respectful of your time. We've certainly passed our 30 minutes that we were going to be chatting, but I appreciate the conversation. Is there any last little thing you want to say?
That's our mantra. Don't wish for it, work for it. That's it.
Don't wish for it, work for it. I love that too. Yep. And so everybody out there, let's get to work because we can't just wish for it. We got to work for it. Chris, man, I appreciate you being on. Thank you for taking the time to spend some time with me this morning. And I think it was spectacular. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
This has been a Business Aspirin, Pain Relief for Business podcast. If you're a business owner trying to overcome your business pains, follow us on Apple Podcasts or visit our website for more information, job-docs.com.